A whole lot to cover. Mostly the media completely out of control, revealing itself. It's not even the fake news, it's the Democrat media. That's what it is. It's the Democrat media. The media carry the ideological ball for the Democrats. It's the media that's pressing for subpoenas and impeachment and indictments of the president and people surrounding the president. And now we have a constitutional crisis, ladies and gentlemen. No, we don't. Oh, we don't have a constitutional crisis? No. Former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions was asked to resign. And he resigned. And he's being replaced by his chief of staff, temporarily, an acting Attorney General by the name of Whitaker. And now they're trying to smear Whitaker. And isn't it amazing how the media and the Democrats on the left now run to the defense of Jeff Sessions, a man they once called a racist, a man they once accused of befriending white supremacists, a man who they once blocked from becoming a circuit court judge, who then ran for the United States Senate and won, a man who they didn't think was ethical enough to oversee the Russia investigation. Now, just like Comey, who they despised and hated. Jeff Sessions is their hero. No, Jeff Sessions is not their hero. They like the fact that the Attorney General of the United States had recused himself and was not overseeing the Russia investigation, which is exactly why the same Democrats are demanding that the acting Attorney General do exactly the same thing. But why? Well, it's like the Saturday Night Massacre. Now, some of you may not be old enough to know what the Saturday Night Massacre was. It was Richard Nixon ordering his Attorney General to fire the special counsel, Archibald Cox. He wouldn't. He resigned. Then Richard Nixon ordered the Deputy Attorney General to fire the special counsel, Archibald Cox. He would not. He resigned. The next in line, the Solicitor of the United States, Robert Bork, the President of the United States, directed him to fire Archibald Cox, and he did. The President of the United States hasn't directed anyone to fire anybody. The Mueller investigation goes on, aimlessly, interminably. There's no evidence whatsoever. So now they've lowered the bar. Even the senior judicial analyst has lowered the bar. It's not a matter of firing the special counsel, you see. It's obstruction of justice, the mere fact that we would have a new Attorney General, an acting Attorney General who might be the actual boss of Robert Mueller, you see. That in and of itself could be obstruction of justice. That is a damnable lie. And I'm watching my favorite cable channel at 2 to 3 o'clock, and it goes on and on and on and on. A damnable lie. Nobody's ordered Mueller to do anything. Nobody's ordered Mueller to do anything, but I would tell members of the Supreme Court who might be listening to this program that this should inform you if a challenge to Mr. Mueller's appointment reaches your court, because listen to what's being said, that the special counsel must be independent. He must be independent of any Attorney General. Well then, his name should have been submitted to the United States Senate for confirmation, or not. And it wasn't. Oh, no, he's merely an inferior employee. I am tired of this fan dance where Mr. Mueller is viewed as superior to any other U.S. attorney, any assistant attorney general, above and beyond a special constitutional power, a special constitutional office. But then when you say, well, then everything he's done is unconstitutional since he wasn't confirmed by the Senate, then they say, well, wait a minute, he's nothing but an inferior employee. He reports to this one, he can't do anything without permission. Cite Chuck Schumer's language and what he says. But the president hasn't ordered Mr. Mueller to be fired. In fact, he has carefully avoided such a thing. And the new acting attorney general is not required to recuse himself from anything unless he has an actual conflict of interest. Well, he gave us an opinion. He gave his opinion on the Mueller investigation, and he didn't much like it. That's not what a conflict of interest means. Conflict of interest means perhaps a financial issue or something of that sort. Otherwise, what would you call Eric Holder but an Obama political hack? What would you call Loretta Lynch but an Obama political hack? They never recused themselves from anything. Ever. I am tired of the phony legal analysts on cable TV. I'm sick of them. I don't care what damn court they served on. I don't care what damn law school they taught. They have no idea what they're talking about. I'm the one who had to deal with 3 different independent counsel. I'm the one who had a client to deal with Lawrence Walsh, an independent counsel. This isn't the Saturday Night Massacre. This isn't a constitutional crisis. This is perfectly legitimate and perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong whatsoever. But I want you to listen to Chuck Schumer and David Heilman of MSNBC, and John Brennan of MSNBC, and David Gregory of CNN, and Representative Ted Lieu, and Senator Mazie Hirono. All objective people, of course, all thoughtful, serious people. Tell me, by the way, if you can tell the difference between the MSNBC commentators and the liberal Democrats. The answer is no, of course. But listen to this idiocy. Cut 17, go.
It would create a constitutional crisis.
Again, to be absolutely clear, there's no ambiguity. We are hurtling towards the constitutional crisis we've all been worried about for the last 2 years.
When we indeed may be facing constitutional crisis very soon.
Exactly. I just think that, the question of whether this has been a slow-motion Saturday Night Massacre.
So it seemed like the only reason Donald Trump fired him was to interfere with the special counsel's investigation. If that's the case, that could constitute obstruction of justice.
I think as long as the Mueller investigation continues, that this is yet more actions by the president that goes to obstruction of justice.
There you have a gaggle of morons. But it doesn't matter. They would be thrilled if the mob broke into the White House compound, forced their way into the Oval Office, dragged the president out, and strung him up by his feet on the closest telephone pole. They would be thrilled, while waving around the Constitution. More Chuck Schumer at a press conference today. Cut 14, go.
Well, I'd say this. I've just heard the news, but I'd say this. Protecting Mueller and his investigation is paramount. It would create a constitutional crisis if this were a prelude to ending or greatly limiting.
By the way, the word is prelude, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Investigation. And I hope President Trump and those he listens to will refrain from that.
Actually, you don't. Cut 15, go.
I find the timing very suspect, number one.
Yes, the timing's very suspect. After a midterm election, presidents never change cabinet officials. Never, ever. I can't think of one time. Can you, ladies and gentlemen? Actually, I can think of dozens of times. But this is suspicious, you see. It's suspicious. This president has done nothing to interfere with the Russia investigation. Even though he has the constitutional power, he's done nothing. He hasn't withheld any funds from the FBI. He hasn't interfered with the funding of the Mueller investigators and investigation. He hasn't done a thing. Nothing. Wouldn't it have been grand if he had his Eric Holder type as Attorney General of the United States? Do you think Schumer would be demanding recusal then? Or is Loretta Lynch as Attorney General of the United States? Do you think they'd be demanding recusal then? Of course not. From day one. From day one, they've launched this phony investigation. And then there's John Dean. They drag out John Dean. This is the hilarity of the new media. John Dean, a disgraced, disbarred liar. Right, Johnny? From the Nixon administration. The White House counsel. From the Nixon administration. He teaches ethics courses, don't you know? And he's a favorite on CNN. CNN loves this guy. Of course they do. He's almost as good as Jeffrey Toobin, who has his own issues, don't you, Jeff? So they drag out, of all people, John Dean. Go.
Well, unlike the Saturday Night Massacre, where Nixon relieved the special prosecutor Cox, that was sort of a culmination of disregard for the president's directions to not go after his tapes. Here, I think this seems to be planned like a murder. I say that given the fact that the president was asked the question in the press conference this morning. He brushed it off, said we'll deal with it later, and he's clearly been thinking about it, and later meant he's not necessarily going to fire Mueller. He's going to undercut him by the people around him.
Anybody have any idea what this rambling buffoon is saying? What this bumbling, mumbling buffoon has to say? Anybody? Of course not. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.